morning, everyone, and welcome to the latest review of the latest episode of Hawkeye, Season 1, Episode 4. In my continuing effort to try to watch and understand and digest the ongoing evolution of the Marvel cinematic / television universe. Almost got it! Anyway, good morning, Eager Pony. My one viewer, maybe, as far as I can tell, although maybe nobody's watching. Oh, Mike Blarg. Mike Savage Blarg. All right. Well, let's just go on as we mean to proceed. At the end of Hawkeye season 3, episode 3, which, in my opinion, thus far has been the best episode of Hawkeye in relative terms, both in action, choreography, and acting. Our heroes ended up back at Kate Bishop's house, where they're trying to find information on Sloan Limited and who these people were that were associated with the Tracksuit Mafia. And so, as they are about to discover this, Clint is accosted by Jacques with the Ronin sword, and that's where we cut off at the last time. Now, I want you to take note. He has accosted Clint with the Ronin sword. Remember, the Ronin sword that was stolen from the black market auction. The Ronin sword that goes along with the Ronin outfit, the outfit that Clint has been hunting down. The Ronin sword that Kate herself saw at the auction and knows is associated with Ronin. I just want to make sure we understand that, because after Clint is accosted with the sword, let me get to the right frame here. Yes, there he is holding the sword. Jack and Mom are both there. I guess they came home suddenly. And then the four of them have a little sit-down chat. Now, what goes on during the course of this chat? Well, first and foremost, I want to point out that the coffee cup that Jack is drinking out of has a pattern of hexagons on it. So that means that Ryan Airy over at Screen Crush is going to go nuts, because Ryan Airy at Screen Crush loves his hexagons in Marvel properties. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just watch the Easter egg video that'll inevitably be coming out on Screen Crush today for this episode. If he doesn't mention it, I'll be shocked. Anyway, so they sit here and they have a little chat where Kate tells her mom and Jack that she and Hawkeye are like partners now. And Hawkeye's like, we're not partners, because Hawkeye's all grumpy, as he should be, because he's a grumpy character. And so Mom and Jack are like, what's going on? Why are you here? And Kate's like, oh, I'm working with Hawkeye on a case. And Mom's like, oh, so my daughter's helping you with an Avengers level threat? And he's like, it's not like that. And Jack's like, oh, by the way, thank you for saving the world and everything. You know what never comes up during the course of this conversation? What never comes up? The sword. The Ronin sword. I swear to God. So they're sitting there and they're chatting, and it's all kibitzing back and forth. We're partners. No, you're not partners. Yeah, we're working together. No, we're not working together. I'm trying to keep your daughter out of this. No, I'm totally in on this, etc., etc. There's the hexagons. Mephisto confirmed. So as they're sitting there, I'm not going to fall in the frame, am I? Anyway, Clint notices the sword just sitting off to the side against the wall next to the exit to the room. Kate doesn't see this. Kate apparently did not acknowledge the sword, the unique sword, the collapsible sword, the sword that belongs to Ronin, and that it's in the possession of Jack. Jack, who should not have it because it was stolen from the black market auction. Anyway, so Clint ends up palming the sword. Somehow the sword, which is fully extended when we see it, Clint somehow grabs the sword, collapses it into its handle, and pockets it as he's leaving the apartment. How he does this without anybody noticing or hearing the sound, I don't know. And so then he gets taken aside by Mom just before he leaves. And she's like, look, I don't know what's going on, but my daughter can't get involved in this. She's precious to me. And, and he's like, well, your daughter's really talented. And she's like, well, wasn't Natasha Romanoff talented and she didn't survive? And like, damn, that's cold. And then she's like, look, you have kids, right? Or I'm assuming you do. Okay, well, then you understand, et cetera, how, dear my daughter's safety is to me. And he's like, no, okay, I get it. I understand. And, character wise, Clint is in someone else's house. He's being talked down to by someone else's parent. He's trying to be polite and gracious, except he stole the Ronin sword. Jack didn't notice the Ronin sword was stolen. Kate didn't notice the Ronin sword was even in existence in this place. Anyway, so he leaves after mom says, keep my daughter out of this. And he says, I'll keep her safe, etc., etc. He's got the sword. And then Clint tweets his wife to say, can you run Sloan Limited, please? So Clint needs to ask his wife to do research on stuff that he and Kate were looking up, right? Okay. Then mom calls somebody, some mysterious person, saying that she needs to talk to them urgently after having, Clint in her house. Anyway, so yeah, Clint talks to his wife, and wife tells him that the CEO of Sloan Limited is Jack Duquesne. What? It's Kate's mom's fiance is the CEO of the company attached to the Russian tracksuit guys. What? Shocking, I guess. And so he says, Jack CEO, he's laundering money for the big guy. Who's the big guy? Could it be the Kingpin? It could be. We keep hinting at it. Anyway, so he's like, yeah, this is going to take a while. And then mom is trying to keep from her kids what dad is up to because the kids are totally oblivious, which they're not. But then she talks to Clint in German. Anything else go missing from the compound? Right? And then she asks him, let's see if I can find the frame here. Okay, well, she asks him about, or he mentions, she says something like, anything else go missing from the compound? He's like, oh, you mean the Rolex? Remember the watch that is the MacGuffin for this whole series, apparently? Yeah, Clint is like, oh, you mean the Rolex? And he's like, I thought that should have been destroyed in the explosion. And she's like, well, I thought so, but I thought the same thing about your fancy outfit. What is the Rolex? And he says, if you can, check the signal from the transmitter. So the Rolex has a transmitter, which could be checked at any time to see where it is or if it's, operational. But ever since the compound exploded, no one ever thought until now to check on the transmitter for the magic Rolex watch. But just on a whim, Clint's wife can do that? What? Okay. Anyway, so Clint's like, I swear I'm going to make it home for Christmas. I got to stay a little longer to figure this thing out and keep Kate safe. And then Kate, Jack, and Eleanor have this, I don't know, parent-daughter conference thing where they're talking about like, oh, maybe we should play a board game. And, your mother loves to dance. Mom doesn't dance. Oh, let me show you that your mother dances. And he offers her a dance. And then Kate sees her mom happy, really happy for the first time. And she gets this look on her face like, oh, isn't that sweet? And we go through this whole routine of Kate, sort of, my mom's happy. Jack makes her happy. This is very inconvenient since I think Jack killed a guy and is the CEO of a mafia company. I don't know. Well, actually, maybe Kate doesn't know that yet. I take it back. She doesn't know that Jack's the CEO of the thing, but she's about to find out. Anyway, and so she's like, I don't think I've ever seen you like that before. Happy? Wow. Okay. And so, they're like, oh, let's play some games. And Jack makes another mistake of aphorisms. He says, the other day you said absence makes the heart grow older. And they have a little, I don't know what this scene is meant to do because it's very awkward and very weird. It goes on too long and it tries way too hard. But yeah, so Jack is a red herring. I'm happy to be proven wrong, but Jack is made out to be literally a mustache twirling villain pulling the strings or something. He's a red herring somehow, some way. But anyway, I think Mom's a villain. I'm pretty sure Mom's a villain. I'm not sure that Jack is a villain. I guess we'll find out. Anyway, so Clint goes back to the safe house and ices himself up with some drinks and stuff. And then before he can sit down and relax, Kate comes over with pizza and Christmas movies and Christmas cheer, because after everything that's gone on and Clint's seemingly sincere effort to want to keep her out of the dangerous stuff, he just welcomes her back into the house and is like, yeah, like nothing happened. And they have a little Christmas party and they're sitting around talking about stuff. And also, Clint's drinking out of a cup. I don't know if I could freeze on that again. You can't see it right here, but his cup says Thanos was right, which is an interesting selection given his personal experience. But anyway, I assume that is a cup owned by the home owner and not owned by Clint, but it was very... Because here's the thing. In the first episode, when Clint is at the musical, at one point he goes to the restroom, and I think I missed this bit when I did my review the first time around. And when he goes to the restroom, written on the wall or on one of the urinals or something was some graffiti that said Thanos was right. And he has like a little PTSD anger moment looking at that. So it's bizarre that now he's just got a cup with it on there and nothing is said of it or otherwise. Anyway, so they start making drinks and putting on ugly sweaters and watching Christmas movies. And she starts sort of trying to figure out the connections between Jack and the tracksuit mafia, Ronan, Sloan, the cops. Because last episode, a police officer called Kate because he wanted her to come in for some questioning about certain recent events where she was spotted. But that still hasn't happened. So they're talking and putting up the tree and talking and stuff. And they're talking about trick arrows because that's cute. They start putting up decorations, and Kate challenges Clint to hit something because he says, I can knock out somebody with a quarter. And he says, a dime's too light, but a quarter, maybe a nickel. And she's like, well, then show me. I think it's bullshit. And so he flicks this little ornament to hit without even looking. He flicks the little ornament to hit the button on the TV and turn it off. And Kate's like, what the fuck? And then she says, teach me how to do that. And so then we go through a montage of her trying to flick a coin to turn off the TV. And she, after about 3 tries, she gets it. Yay, let's celebrate. And she says, what's the best shot you ever took? And he says, the one I didn't. And she's like, what do you mean? He's like, no, I don't want to talk about it. And she's like, no, really, you have to tell me. He's like, no, look, I shouldn't have said it. She's like, no, tell me. He's like, it's not a good story. It's just not a good story, okay? And he goes into reminiscing about the first time he met Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, where he was sent out to kill her, but he didn't. And then the chain of events thereafter turned them into bestest friends forever. So it's a very sad moment. It's an acting moment. And I got to once again say just how, in some ways, episode to episode, Jeremy Renner's acting abilities are wasted on this series. Because Jeremy Renner's a really good actor. Oscar-nominated / award-winning actor. And he's too good for the writing of this show. In the scenes where he gets to act, actually act, he carries the scene. But it just goes to highlight how weak so much else of the show is. And honestly, after the events of episode 3, which were comparatively great, everything so far is kind of disappointing. Anyway, so more reminiscing about Natasha being dead and his guilt over that, and da-da-da-da-da. And then Kate kind of figures out in the course of this conversation that he is Ronan, or was Ronan. It was you, wasn't it? And he's like, he talks about his job and what his purpose is. He's a weapon, You know, he was trained to kill people, hunt them down, etc. And that's why I'm here. I can't go home till I fix it. I'm not quite sure what he means by fixing it, because he has the Ronin outfit, he has the sword. Everything that he was intending to do in the first place is there, but now we have more problems, obviously. So, what is he trying to fix now? I mean, I guess get Kate out of trouble, except the fact that she is now so deep in trouble that the only way she could get out of trouble is if every mobster they've encountered so far was murdered. I guess. I don't know. Anyway, well, he also knows that Jack Duquesne is CEO of the thing, etc. So I'm not sure if he's told Kate that yet in the storyline. Anyway, they've got a plan because, or he's got a plan. And then Clint tries to go to sleep and he has flashbacks from other movies, like when he saw his wife after the snap and losing Natasha on the Space Mountain and everything. So then they have this little morning thing, and he talks about his tracer arrow stopped moving. And I'm trying to remember, like, when did he shoot a tracer arrow? And I can't remember. I mean, a lot of things happened in episode 3. So if he shot a tracer arrow at something, then I obviously have forgotten. But anyway, he says the tracer arrow stopped moving. And he sends her out to go find the LARPer friends. You remember the LARPers from like episode 2 or whatever? The LARPers who, some of whom were firefighters and or police officers. Yeah, he's sending Kate to go to the LARPers to find the firefighters and or cops among them in order to retrieve the trick arrows that were confiscated from him or confiscated from the crime scene, or I don't know, because I don't know. Somehow the police have in their custody trick arrows that are intact and usable. And Clint needs them. So he sends Kate to go through the LARPers to get them. Anyway, so she finds the LARPers in the park practicing their swordplay, etc. And she just like walks up to them and says, hey, don't mean to interrupt, but you guys, can you help me? You know, Hawkeye sent me here to get your help to do things. And they're like, what kind of help are you looking for? And she's like, I want to use a cop. And she's like, yes, I'm Officer Wendy Conrad, better known as Elspeth of Deepdale. Now, I've had some past experience with LARPers, but not the sword and sorcery type boffer weapon LARPers. So maybe this is how they operate in places. I don't know, but it seems more like a caricature of LARPers than, well, truth be told, LARPers are kind of caricatures of themselves. But anyway, so yes, the cop says, "Oh, what do you need from me?" And she's like, "Yeah, I just need some evidence tampering," she said. You know, casual run-of-the-mill evidence tampering, as in, could you go into the property room, the evidence room, and retrieve the trick arrows, which, again, maybe I missed it. I am reaching back in my mind for a point at which in this series where Clint had his trick arrows taken into custody by the cops, or any number of them, because most of them were used in the last episode against the Russian guys. But anyway, yeah, so she asked them to commit a major felony. And they're like, yeah, I think I can do that if you do something for us, if you make it worth my while. All right, so we have a completely corrupt police officer here willing to essentially take a bribe for evidence tampering. I have so many questions about what's going on here because it makes absolutely no sense. Anyway, so the LARPers agree to help Kate retrieve arrows from the property room in exchange for her helping them. And how is she going to help them? Well, we'll find out shortly. Anyway, so then Kazi with the Tracksuit Mafia, you know, the second in command to Maya Lopez, the current head of the Tracksuit Mafia, He's coming out of a little business. He goes to his car. He gets in the car, and oops, Clint's in the back seat. And if you can believe it, Clint already requisitioned all of Kazi's hidden weapons in the car. A little bit of a cliche interaction here, but that's what it is. Anyway, so they have a conversation, and the gist of the conversation is this. He's like, hey, Kazi, you seem to be the most level-headed one amongst them, and you're also Maya's second in command. And you can see that her obsession with hunting down Ronin is going to either get her killed and or other people killed, and I don't want anybody else to die. So can we work together to try to get her to stop this? So he's appealing to Kazi's sort of love for Maya and pragmatism. I don't know how well that's going to work out, because in fact it doesn't work out, as we'll see later. But anyway, we have this scene which is, I don't know, it doesn't really tell us anything we didn't already know, but now it sort of makes Clint have a connection to Kazi some way, or at least they have I guess they have a mutual goal in a way. Kazi doesn't want Maya to die because obviously Kazi's in love with Maya, and Clint doesn't want anybody else to get hurt or die, and Maya's obsession will do that. So they have a common cause. I don't know how this is going to work out the next time they meet, but I guess that'll be in episode 5. Maybe. Thank you, Point Curation. Hope everyone is having a nice day. You too, Point. I hope you're having a nice day as well. Thank you so much. So anyway, they have this little conversation, banter back and forth, etc., tough guy talk, and then Clint leaves. And then he gets back to the safe house. And at the safe house, the LARPers have moved in. And the LARPers are showing off their costuming skills to Kate, because Kate has promised them the materials to make more costumes in exchange for their help to get the arrows back, which they did. We'll get to that in a moment. Anyway, so then Kate says, I will buy you the materials to make your own costumes, and maybe 2 more on top of that. And she's like, what? I'm like, well, Clint needs some new branding. So by the end of this, Kate and Clint are going to have character-appropriate LARPer-made costumes for Hawkeye and Junior Hawkeye, which I think is kind of given away by some of the promotional material to the series. But either way, we knew it was coming. So anyway, they go back and forth. And then, Clint's like, okay, where are my arrows? And, and then the cop shows up. And the cop has the arrows in her bag. And she's like, okay, well, this bag is really special. This is my bag. The bag full of arrows. Now, Clint has a backpack on. But anyway, they have to take the bag. And here's the thing, and I don't know if I can find the frame in which it happens, but this bag is very special to me. My wife bought me this bag. I'm like, Why doesn't he just take the arrows out of the bag and put them in his own quiver or bag? Why are we arguing about this bag? Why is this here? And I'm cynical enough to think that this interaction is here only because we wanted to point out that this character has a wife. Because there's no other reason for this to take place in the real world. Just hand him the arrows and he puts them in his quiver, which he obviously has to have because he's Hawkeye. But no, he has to take some designer bag with him that doesn't even look like it's a bag that could hold things. And what's so special about this gym bag? I don't know. Anyway, so yes, the bag is very important. I'm sure that'll come up as a very significant plot device later. Anyway, so then Clint and Kate are setting out to do what? Well, going to where the transmitter of the watch is pinging off. And what is the watch exactly? Well, Clint intimates that the watch belongs to someone he used to work with. And if the watch falls into the wrong hands, that person could have their identity blown and then no more friend. Now, the running theory is that the watch was some kind of Stark Tech weapon or Stark Tech device. that the watch opens something up somewhere or something. Now, if he's talking about a friend whose identity is going to be blown, well, it can't be Tony Stark because, well, Tony Stark's dead and everybody knew who he was. And so I'm trying to think of any other Avengers whose identity is still secret, because I'm having a hard time thinking of one. Because one of the interesting conceits of the MCU is that for the most part, most of the superheroes and their identities are not secret. It's not some kind of like thing like the FBI knows who Ant-Man is, etc. That kind of thing. So I'm at a loss of all the currently introduced Avengers to know which one still has a secret identity. Anyway, so yeah, the watch, the Rolex. They're standing outside this apartment. They're figuring out how they're going to break into this apartment. Now, did they do any research to find out whose apartment it is? No. And I think I might have skipped over the bit. It might have happened during the apartment scene. So yeah, Clint got a. Is it in here? Let me make sure. Okay, yeah, there's a bit that is missing from. I must have skipped over it. At one point, Clint's wife contacts him again and says something to the effect of like, here's the address for the watch where it's pinging off of. And also your friend, I think she said something like your friend's hard to get a hold of or something. He's doing a lot of jogging and learning Russian. And I'm trying to think, your friend doing a lot of jogging, learning Russian. And the only jogging reference I can think of is the whole bit between Captain America and Falcon, where they're running around the fountain or whatever, or the lake in Winter Soldier. So is he talking about, or I should say, is she talking about the new Captain America, i.e. Sam Wilson, or some other character? I don't know. Anyway, so yes, Kate has gone along with Clint to this apartment building, which they haven't researched whose apartment it might be, who lives there, etc. They just go there blank. How do I know they did no research about who lives there or what the apartment might be significant of? Well, I'll show you in a minute. Anyway, so Clint's talking about how he's going to break into the apartment and that Kate is going to be his lookout. And so super spy Clint Barton is looking at the building and talking about his plan. And we're zooming in on Clint talking about it. And then he turns his head and then all of a sudden Kate's not there. Because Clint Barton, SHIELD trained super spy, didn't notice Kate leaving his side and going down into the street to take things into her own hands. She's going to break into the building in a lot less complicated way than Hawkeye because, well, Hawkeye is just being complicated and fuddy-duddy. And Kate knows better. So this kind of reminds me of if you ever saw the movie Spy Game with Brad Pitt and the guy whose name is famous and Robert Redford. And there's this scene where Robert Redford challenges a spy in training, Brad Pitt, to make his way into J-Random building within 5 minutes and, to basically tradecraft his way into the building. And Brad Pitt eventually, does this by just kind of sweet talking somebody into letting him into the building and et cetera. Well, that's what this kind of reminded me of, although it was not nearly as interesting because Kate just sort of luckily comes across an old man that needs help getting into the building and she helps him with his bags. I don't know if this guy is somebody significant having a cameo or something. It just seemed like kind of a weird interaction. And I don't know if he's just an actor or somebody else, but either way. So she helps him with his bags into the building. She gets in the elevator, goes up the elevator, kind of weirds the guy out because she's talking to herself because she's got a radio in her ear. He never asks about the bow and the arrows on her or nothing. Completely, fine. And then she breaks into the apartment we've done absolutely no research on who lives here or anything else. Interesting thing. The chain is broken on this door. Now, there wasn't any sign of a broken, frame or whatever. So I'm not quite sure why the chain is broken. But it is, and it's more like sliced. That didn't happen in this scene. Kate just jimmied the lock and opened up the door. I don't know if this is supposed to be indicative of something or if there's a missing scene where she opens the door and the chain's still on and she has to do something to cut the chain that we're just missing. But that was a bizarre little bit there that I'm not quite sure if that, I don't know what that means, if it means anything, but it's a weird element. Anyway, so she gets in the room and it looks like just your average sort of apartment. Although I'll tell you, let me see if I can get it again. I don't know what that is, but it looks like either a tiny record player or maybe it doesn't. Well, maybe it's a full size record player. I guess just the perspective of it. Anyway, it looks like an antiquated like tabletop record player, which is interesting given who lives here, unless it's a device for something else. But we'll get to that in a moment. Anyway, so all of a sudden, as she walks in the room, all these little strobe lights start going off, and to solve this, she wastes some putty arrows on the strobe lights to make them stop strobing, which doesn't make much sense, but that's what she does. She uses up 2 like gummy putty arrows to stop the strobe lights from strobing, as though whatever the strobe lights are doing is only just putting light out. And Barton's like, "What do you mean strobe lights?" And she says, "I don't know." She walks into the apartment and strobe lights start going off. And Clint says, "I don't know what that means." Or he indicates he doesn't know what that's supposed to mean. Okay, well, let's move on. So he's watching her and he starts explaining. This is where he starts explaining that the identity attached to that watch is still secret. And if the tracksuits find out about it, well, then it would blow their cover. Goodbye, friend. Who are we talking about? I don't know. Again, I am trying to think if there is some Avenger or side character whose identity is secret that could be attached to the Avengers and that a watch would be evidence of their identity. I'm sure all of this will be explained in the next episode or so because there's only 2 episodes left in this series. But it must be something either retconned or something I'm just forgetting. I don't know. There's been a lot of movies. Anyway, so yeah, she gets the watch. It's just sitting there. This thing that the tracksuit mafia went to so much trouble to attain by blowing open a wall and attacking a black market auction. And it's just sitting on a shelf in somebody's apartment. Okay. So anyway, Kate gets the watch and then she notices a photo. I think it is here. Oh, sorry. There's a notebook behind the watch that lists off Clint Barton's family members. Now, given the fact that Clint Barton's identity is not secret, I mean, sure, finding a list of someone's kids and wife, etc., might be creepy and is indeed something to be concerned about when it's in the hands of somebody who stole a watch from a secret black market auction. But at the same time, it's like, well, your information isn't secret, dude. Your identity is known. What? Either you have precautions for your family or you don't. So anyway, Clint suddenly realizes it's Maya's apartment. Why does he realize it's Maya's apartment? Because the strobe lights are the alarm system for deaf people. He only suddenly now realizes this. It only suddenly now occurs, perhaps, that maybe you should have checked to see whose apartment you were going into before you went, or at least assumed that if the watch is in someone's apartment and the watch was stolen from a black market auction, that perhaps the apartment associated with the watch is owned by a criminal that may be dangerous. I don't know. Anyway, none of that apparently took place before doing this. So now suddenly they realize that it's Maya's apartment. And just as they realize that, Maya appears and starts attacking Kate. Because Maya just got into the apartment silently. But I guess Maya is kind of trained as a ninja, so I guess that's legit. So Kate is like, "Oh my God, Maya's here." And Clint's like, "Yes, I'm fighting her right now." And she's like, "What? No, Maya's here in the apartment with me." And Clint is on the roof across the street fighting somebody with some like Splinter Cell goggles on, who happens to be female. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I know exactly who that is because I read the comic books. And also, if you watch the Splinter Cell lady fighting, you can see some very signature moves and poses made. And I'm like, That's Yelena Belova. That's going to be Black Widow number 2, isn't it? I was not disappointed. So anyway, Splinter Cell, or Black Widow 2, is fighting Clint on the rooftop. And I missed the part here, but Clint had shot a wire arrow across the buildings so that Kate could slide down on them using her bow. And there is a small bit of comedy where Kate slides down but reaches an equilibrium point on the wire and can't move any further forward and is just hanging in space in the middle of the street, which is kind of funny for a second. I mean, it was kind of funny, but so much is going on that it kind of felt like an unnecessary pause to the action. Anyway, so eventually the wire is wobbled by Black Widow 2, and she's able to slide back down to the roof. Okay, so then we have Clint, Black Widow 2, and Kate fighting on the rooftop. And they're fighting and they're fighting. And then Maya Lopez ends up on the roof all of a sudden because I'm not quite sure. Did Maya Lopez go down the wire too? Maybe that was it. No, that's Kate. I don't know how Maya Lopez ended up here. Aside from being able to, like, I guess, go down from the apartment that she was in, down to the street, run across the street, up several flights of stairs to the roof, and start fighting. Anyway, so all 4 of them are on the rooftop now, and they're fighting. Maybe Maya slid down the wire. I don't know. Anyway, so then Black Widow type tech is used to take out Maya. So now we know that Black Widow is not working with or for Maya, but that Maya and Black Widow are separate entities fighting Clint and Kate. I have a feeling that Black Widow was hired by Mom, perhaps. I don't know. I'm a little off at this point. Anyway, so then Black Widow 2 throws Kate off the building, but fortunately Kate somehow still had a wire tethered to her chest. I don't know when that happened. I wasn't sure when it happened when I was watching this live, and I'm not sure when it happened now. It must have been explained in some split-second moment in the fight, but if it was, I missed it. Anyway, so now remember, Maya Lopez and Black Widow 2 are still on the rooftop up here, and Clint is taking time with his back turned to them to deal with Kate, who is obviously now safe. And so instead of pulling her up, he cuts the rope and drops her onto the street, which gives Kate just enough time to, well, run back into the building as Clint is now fighting Maya Lopez and Black Widow 2. And then Kate shows back up on the roof. And it's like, well, what was the point of kicking Kate off the roof if she's just going to come back up and start fighting again? I don't know. Just because, I guess. So then Kate shoots a trick arrow that does a sonic boom explosion thing and knocks everybody back. And then Black Widow 2 is so discombobulated that she decides to finally take off her mask after some more fighting. Well, actually, I take it back. Kate shoots an arrow into Maya's shoulder. I don't know if I can fall on that frame, but she does do this. She shoots Maya in the shoulder, and then Maya pulls the arrow out of her shoulder. Yeah, there we go. And then I guess at that point she escapes, I think. And then Black Widow 2 finally takes off her mask, and oh my God, it's Yelena Belova, the other character from the Black Widow movie, which wasn't that great of a movie. And the character of Yelena Belova is going to be the new Black Widow. And you'd only understand that if you saw Black Widow. You wouldn't recognize her at all in this, but that's who it is. But her stance, her moves, her landing style, and her little sparkler gauntlets kind of give it away. Anyway, so then Black Widow 2 jumps off a building, and Kate's like, "Why did you drop me onto the street? I'm your partner." And he says, "You're not my partner. Do you understand that? Even though you are doing absolutely nothing to discourage her from that belief by taking her on a stakeout." And the writing in this is so bad. So bad. You cannot have this kind of contentious relationship at this point. I mean, I suppose Clint could just be living in fantasy land in denial of the reality of the situation, but we're not talking about a guy who doesn't know what's going on around him and doesn't have an understanding or an appreciation for reality. It just, stop it. Give it up. Give up this, you're not my partner, I don't have partners, I work alone. It doesn't work anymore. After all this, it doesn't work. So anyway, he says, someone hired a Black Widow assassin. This has gotten very real very quickly. Really? You mean the the car chase with the guns wasn't enough of a very real? The explosions, the destruction of the bridge from the last episode, being threatened with death, Kate almost being killed by Maya Lopez, and on and on and on. That wasn't real. Now it's real. Oh, well, golly gee, thanks, Clint. I needed that headline. It's now real because a different karate assassin showed up. Anyway, what's the significance of Yelena Belova? Well, presumably this takes place after the Black Widow movie, because the Black Widow movie took place in between several other movies. At the end of the Black Widow movie, in a post-credit scene, Yelena Belova is basically recruited by, what's her name? I suddenly forget her name. Anyway, it's the same character that recruited John Walker from the Falcon and Winter Soldier TV show into some secret quasi-parallel Dark Avengers initiative kind of thing. So like this new organization will have its own Captain America and its own Black Widow. So Black Widow, conceivably, this Black Widow, Yelena Belova, is working for this secondary Dark Avengers team. I'm just going to call it Dark Avengers because that seems to be what they're building, along with the Young Avengers, because they keep introducing characters from the Young Avengers comics and also setting up some kind of Dark Avengers. Yeah. Anyway, or Thunderbolts, could be Thunderbolts. But that's where the episode ends. This got very real very quickly. So she says, look, I know that tonight didn't go as planned, but I chose to be here. And she says, I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to do it. And then he says, it's over. And then cut to black. Oh my God. Only now does Clint say it's over. This is too serious. There's a Black Widow involved. It's too serious. Senior staff reporter and chief Florida correspondent Colleen Bernier reminds me it is Countess Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. Yes. She is the sort of evil Nick Fury putting together, as a Contessa, yes. Putting together the Dark Avengers or the Thunderbolts or whatever. So yeah, that's Hawkeye episode 4, wherein we have several scenes that make no sense, that try to arise emotions or character connections that seem very awkward, plot points that are either not addressed or completely break other plot points, and dialogue and character logic that defies the same. There you go. That's episode 4. What'll happen in episode 5? Well, I'm hoping we find out what the watch is, because that's the big mystery. And and just bring in the Kingpin. Okay, we already know that Daredevil is coming back to the MCU in the Spider-Man movie. We're going to see Matt Murdock. Just bring us Vincent D'Onofrio. Remind us that there was at one point some quality in Marvel television universe stuff. Seriously, go watch the first season of Daredevil on Netflix. You want to see what a Marvel TV show could be when you have an appreciation for the source material and take your time to craft interesting characters, etc. Watch the first season of Daredevil. Hell, just watch the first episode. It's what Marvel could be on TV. And every time a new Marvel show comes out, I have my fingers crossed. Maybe, just maybe, this show will be the Daredevil of Disney Plus. It hasn't happened yet. I'm really scared for what they might do with Moon Knight. I'm really scared for what they might do with the Punisher if they bring him back into the fold, especially when it's Disney running the show. because the Punisher is not a Disney princess. But with that, everyone, I'm going to call it here. Thank you so much for joining me for this review of Hawkeye Episode 4. Barring something else happening, I'll be back next week on Wednesday for Hawkeye Episode 5. And if you'd like to hear more from me, you can find me tomorrow night on this channel at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for the next installment of TED Excellence, where I'll be looking at another off-brand TED Talk for your enjoyment and mind-melting pleasure. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have so very little to do, thankfully. Everybody who donated, thank you so much for your generosity. I really do appreciate it. Hope you all have a good rest of your Wednesday. I hope you're all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.